Thanksgiving dinner is supposed to be about family, not public humiliation. But that night, in front of my parents, my cousins, my uncle, and even my grandmother, my brother stood up, clinked his glass, and announced my salary like it was some kind of party trick. I felt my face burn as everyone turned to look at me, not with pride, but with judgment. And before I could even process the violation, he launched into a speech about how I was the only one in the family who could afford to help, demanding I bankroll his half-baked business idea. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was a setup. He wanted to paint me as selfish if I refused. The whispers around the table confirmed it. My reputation, my years of hard work, and my financial boundaries were being weaponized against me. What he didn't know was that I don't forgive betrayals like this. I document them. I strategize. And eventually, I destroy them. My name is Alex Moreno. I'm 34 years old, a project manager for a national construction firm based in Denver. My job isn't glamorous, but it's solid. After more than a decade of long hours, certification courses, and thankless overtime, I finally earn a salary that lets me breathe, just over 6 figures. I've never bragged about it. If anything, I've gone out of my way to keep my finances private. That's why Thanksgiving felt like a betrayal. We were crammed into my parents' dining room, the same one with the faded wallpaper and the chandelier that's hung there since I was a kid. The air was thick with the smell of sage stuffing and cranberry sauce, the windows fogged from too many bodies and too much food. It should have been comforting. Instead, it became the stage for my humiliation. My younger brother, Jason, stood up. He's 31, restless, and always chasing the next $1 million idea. I watched him raise his glass, that smug grin already telling me he was about to cause trouble. Before dessert, Jason said, clinking his fork against his wineglass, "I think we should all give Alex a round of applause. Did you know my big brother's pulling in 110 grand a year now?" The words sliced through the chatter. Chairs shifted. My aunt's eyes went wide, and my dad leaned back like he was recalculating everything he thought he knew about me. Heat rushed up my neck, and I felt every eye in the room burning into me. I forced out a strained chuckle. "Jason? Seriously?" But he was only warming up. "And since Alex is doing so well," he continued, hands spread like a salesman ready to close a deal, "I figured this is the perfect time to tell you all about my new business venture. All I need is a little seed money. And who better to invest than the family's success story, right?" A ripple of murmurs moved through the table. My grandmother nodded approvingly, my uncle smirked, and my cousin whispered something I couldn't catch. But I felt the shift. The expectation. The trap. Jason hadn't just exposed my salary. He had turned my hard-earned privacy into leverage, and now he was painting me as selfish if I said no. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't a toast. It was an ambush. The silence after Jason's announcement didn't last long. It was broken by my Aunt Carla, who leaned forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, Alex, that's wonderful. You've always been so responsible. If anyone in this family could give Jason a boost, it's you." Her words landed like weights. I glanced down the table, faces nodding, murmurs spreading, each person recalibrating the story in real time. Jason had framed me as the hero turned benefactor, and they were buying it. My cousin Matt piped up, "Come on, man, it's family. It's not like he's asking a stranger. Besides, you'll probably make it back double." I tightened my grip on my fork. The logic was absurd. Jason's ventures always fizzled. Last year it was a subscription box idea that barely lasted 2 months. Before that, a mobile app that never got off the ground. He left a trail of unpaid debts and half-baked ideas, but no one at the table seemed to remember. Even my grandmother, sweet but stubborn at 86, chimed in. "You've been so blessed, mijo. Sometimes blessings are meant to be shared." Jason leaned back, smug, letting the room do the work for him. He didn't need to argue. The guilt train had already left the station. My mother looked torn. She didn't say yes, but her silence was worse. My father just kept his face unreadable, sipping from his whiskey. And all the while, I sat there, boxed in by expectation, my reputation turning into a bargaining chip. Inside, though, my mind was already clicking into gear. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just listened, nodding where I had to, letting them think I was pinned. Because while they tried to push me into Jason's corner, I was already planning how to push back. And if Jason thought I'd cave under pressure, he was about to learn just how badly he'd miscalculated. 2 days after Thanksgiving, Jason texted me a PDF. The subject line read, "Business plan, investor copy." No greeting, no thanks, just the file. I opened it on my laptop that evening, the glow of the screen cutting through the dim light of my apartment. What I saw didn't surprise me, but it did confirm everything I suspected. Page 1, a flashy logo mock-up, generic stock image backgrounds, and a mission statement so vague it could have applied to a hot dog stand or a tech startup. The financials? Inflated projections with no real data to back them up. He claimed he'd triple revenue within 6 months, but offered no breakdown of costs, no supply chain details, no contracts, no customer acquisition strategy. Just buzzwords. I kept scrolling, noting every hole. A chart with no source. A 5-year growth forecast that looked like it had been drawn with a crayon. And then, buried on page 14, a line item for initial debt consolidation. My stomach tightened. He wasn't just asking for startup money. He was planning to use my so-called investment to cover his existing mess. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Jason was trying to wrap his personal debts in the disguise of a venture. Later that night, I replayed Thanksgiving in my head. The timing. The way he announced my salary before dropping his pitch. He'd choreographed the entire thing, betting that the family's guilt pressure would corner me. But I wasn't interested in playing the villain or the piggy bank. I was interested in facts. I printed the entire PDF, laid the pages out across my coffee table, and started marking them with a red pen: holes, contradictions, missing evidence. Each mark felt like a tiny reclaiming of control. Jason thought he could bully me into signing a blank check. Instead, he just handed me the first threads of the rope he didn't know he was wrapping around his own neck. The trick to handling someone like Jason isn't confrontation, it's collection. Confrontation just gives him space to twist the story, to spin himself as the victim. Collection, though, that's evidence. And evidence doesn't argue. So I started small. First, I saved every text message. Every email. I forwarded his PDF to a separate folder on a hard drive I kept offline, labeling it with the date and time. Then I screenshotted the text he sent at 11:42 p.m. on November 25th, timestamp clear, his words casual: "With your salary, you could easily spot me $50K. You'd hardly notice it gone." That line alone was dynamite. Not only had he admitted to the amount he wanted, but he'd framed my refusal as selfishness. Next, I went back through his social media. Jason wasn't careful with what he posted. Buried between gym selfies and memes were boasts about meetings with investors that I knew never happened, pictures of him at bars on nights he'd claimed to be working late, and, most useful, a public post from last year where he ranted about his credit card debt. Screenshotted. Archived. But the real gold came from talking to people outside the family. Quietly. A former roommate told me Jason had bailed on rent twice and left behind unpaid utility bills. Another guy he'd tried to rope into a startup admitted he lost $2,000 before pulling out. I didn't push, I just listened, letting them vent. Each story added another layer to the picture. By the end of the week, I had a binder. A literal binder, tabs for debt, false claims, messages, business plan. It sat on my desk, thick and heavy, as I flipped through the pages. Jason thought this was about family loyalty. What he didn't know was that I was building a record. And once a record exists, it can't be ignored. The question wasn't if I would use it. The question was when. The first call came from my mother. She started gently, her voice carrying that careful softness she used whenever she wanted me to bend without feeling forced. "Alex, sweetheart. Jason told me you two were talking about his business idea. I think it could be good for him. Maybe you could at least consider helping, just a little?" I kept my tone even. "Mom, I'm looking at everything carefully. I'm not rushing." She sighed, and I could picture her twisting the phone cord the way she always did when she was anxious. "He just needs a chance. Don't forget who was there for you when you needed." I cut her off before she could finish. This isn't about the past. It's about now. And right now, what he's asking for isn't realistic. 2 days later, my Aunt Carla texted, "Family takes care of family. Jason just needs a boost. You can afford it." Then came my cousin Matt, "Come on, man, it's pocket change for you. Don't be selfish." The language was almost identical, like Jason was handing out talking points. I could see his fingerprints all over it, each message more aggressive than the last. By the following week, even my grandmother called. "Mijo," she said, her voice brittle with age but sharp with expectation, "your brother believes in this dream. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for family." I listened quietly, letting her finish, then promised I'd think about it. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't reveal what I'd already collected. Meanwhile, Jason grew bolder. He sent me late-night messages, links to overpriced office space listings, and even a draft contract he'd slapped together from some template online. It had no terms of repayment, no interest, no collateral, nothing but his signature line and a space for mine. I printed it, slid it into the binder, and closed it with a snap. Jason thought he was tightening the noose around me with family guilt. What he didn't realize was that every call, every text, every push was another knot in the rope tightening around him. And I wasn't planning on cutting him loose. I've always believed people leave trails, receipts, statements, contracts, applications. Jason was no exception. He just assumed no one would bother looking. The first breadcrumb came from that line item in his so-called business plan, initial debt consolidation. It nagged at me. So, late one night, I pulled his name through a public records search. The results were worse than I expected. 3 delinquent credit accounts. 1 charged-off car loan. A payday loan taken out just last year, still active. The numbers were small individually, $5,000 here, $7,000 there, but together, they painted a picture of someone drowning, not building. I cross-referenced everything with court filings. There it was, a small claims judgment from 2019, a landlord suing him for unpaid rent and damages. I printed every record, highlighting his name, case numbers, amounts. Then I dug into his ventures. His subscription box idea? Registered as an LLC 2 years ago, dissolved within 12 months for failure to file taxes. The app project? Never even incorporated, just a mock-up he'd pitched to friends before abandoning it. Both had traces online, digital corpses left behind by his ambition. Screenshotted. Archived. The deeper I went, the more contradictions surfaced. Jason had bragged at Thanksgiving that he had other investors lined up. But an old Facebook post told a different story, sick of people bailing on me. No one believes in my vision. I noted the date, 9 months before his so-called pitch. He claimed he was debt-free now. Public record said otherwise. He swore his plan would generate guaranteed revenue. The financial projections he sent me were inflated with numbers stolen from industry blogs. I ran a quick reverse search and found whole sections copied word for word. By the time I was done, my binder had doubled in size. Debt records. Failed LLC filings. Screenshots of recycled lies. A map of his fantasy world, collapsing under the weight of documented truth. Jason thought his lies were smoke screens. But with every piece of paper I added, the smoke cleared, and what remained was the naked outline of a fraud. By mid-December, Jason was restless. His texts came daily now, swinging between confidence and desperation. When are we signing? I need to lock in this lease before the end of the month. Don't leave me hanging, bro. Family doesn't do that. Each message slid neatly into my binder, dated and preserved. He thought he was pressuring me. What he didn't realize was that I was baiting him into overplaying his hand. So, I shifted gears. I told him I was open to the idea, but only if he could provide proof. Contracts. Bank statements. A breakdown of exactly how the money would be spent. I worded it carefully, framing it as due diligence, the way any serious investor would. Predictably, Jason jumped at the chance. Of course, man. I'll send you everything. You'll see. This is solid. But I knew Jason. Proof was his enemy. Lies were his lifeline. Within 2 days, he sent me a slapdash Excel spreadsheet. Half the cells were blank, others filled with made-up figures, numbers so round they looked plucked from thin air. He even listed anticipated investors by first name only, no last names, no amounts committed. I pressed him further. I need contracts, Jason. Bank statements. Show me something verifiable. His tone shifted. Defensive. Bro, you don't trust me? It's family. Why are you treating me like a stranger? Exactly what I wanted him to say, on record, via text, timestamped. Meanwhile, I called the vendors he'd claimed in his PDF. One didn't exist. The other laughed when I asked if they had a contract with Jason. That guy? No way. He inquired once and ghosted us. The noose was tightening, not around me, but around him. By the time Christmas lights went up around my neighborhood, Jason had convinced himself I was close to signing. What he didn't know was that I wasn't preparing to invest. I was preparing to expose. It happened on a Tuesday night, just after New Year's. Jason called me, his voice buzzing with the kind of false confidence I'd heard 100 times before. I hit record on my phone before answering. By then, every conversation with him was evidence waiting to be captured. Alex, listen, he started, I've already told the landlord we're moving forward on the office space. I just need your signature to finalize. That made me pause. At Thanksgiving, he'd claimed he needed the money to launch the business. Now he was saying he'd already committed? I kept my voice flat. Wait, you said you needed the funds to secure the lease. Now you're telling me you already signed something? There was a hitch in his breathing. Then the backpedal began. Well, I mean, not signed. Just, gave him a verbal agreement. He knows we're good for it. Verbal agreement. No funds. No contract. Nothing but Jason's word, which was worth less than the paper he hadn't signed. I pushed further. And what about the other investors? You told me you had 3 lined up. How much have they committed so far? Silence. Then, they're waiting on me to confirm your buy-in first. Once you're in, they're in. I nearly smiled. On tape, he'd just contradicted himself twice. At Thanksgiving, he claimed I'd be joining other investors. Now he admitted they didn't exist without me. The final nail came minutes later, when I asked about his debts. You told everyone you were debt-free. Is that true? Another pause. Then a muttered, well, technically I've still got some credit stuff floating, but that's not the point. Oh, but it was the point. And it was all captured, every stumble, every contradiction, every quiet confession. When the call ended, I transferred the file straight into my evidence binder, labeling it, phone call, January 3rd, 9:17 p.m. Jason thought he'd cornered me into being his savior. What he didn't realize was that he just handed me the weapon I needed to destroy his credibility, in his own voice, with his own words. I set the meeting for a Sunday, 5 p.m., the 1 hour of the week when no one could claim they were busy. My parents' dining room again, same oak table, same chandelier. I told the family chat we'd be finalizing next steps on Jason's venture and that I wanted everyone to hear the plan at once. The phrasing did the trick. Aunt Carla brought brownies. My grandmother wore the gold brooch she saved for important occasions. Jason arrived 10 minutes early, jittery, a man who'd already spent money he didn't have. I arrived with a messenger bag and a small Bluetooth speaker. Inside the bag, the binder, now thick enough to bow the rings, printed call logs, a letter from the Metro Small Business Development Center, SBDC, explaining why Jason's financials were non-credible, and a slim USB drive with 3 audio clips. I'd booked a free consultation with an SBDC advisor 3 days earlier, giving them Jason's investor copy and my list of questions. They sent back a 1-page memo with bullet points in plain English: no verified contracts, misaligned cash flow assumptions, inaccurate market comps, undisclosed liabilities. I'd asked permission to share the memo with my family stakeholders. They said yes. We opened with pleasantries, then I stood. Thanks for coming. I want to be clear, tonight is not about humiliating anyone. It's about facts. It's about risk, responsibility, and family. Jason exhaled like the deal was already done. Perfect, man. I brought the updated spreadsheet. We can sign tonight. I flipped the binder open to the first tab, Messages, and slid a printed page to the center. First, I want to establish the amount requested. Across the top, a photo of Jason's text, timestamped 11:42 p.m., November 25th. With your salary, you could easily spot me $50K. You'd hardly notice it gone. Aunt Carla frowned. My father leaned forward. Next, I said, switching to business plan, Jason circulated an investor deck with revenue projections and vendor relationships. I laid out 3 pages, the forecast graph, the vendor list, and a page I'd watermarked claims. I placed a second set beside them titled Verification, an email from one vendor, printed header, domain, signature block, stating no contract exists, and a reverse image search printout proving 2 charts were lifted from a 2018 blog post. Jason's jaw tightened. Okay, but those are placeholders. We'll get to that, I said, voice steady. I pulled out the SBDC memo and slid it next to the charts. I asked a third-party advisor to take a look. Independent review. Here are their findings. I didn't summarize. I didn't need to. Bullet points carry their own gravity. My mother reads silently, her mouth flattening with each line. I turned to debts. Highlighted public records, case numbers in 12-point font, a 2019 small claims judgment, 3 delinquent accounts, a payday loan open May 7th of last year, balance outstanding. I rotated the binder so everyone could see. Jason told us he was debt-free. Public filings say otherwise. Jason's voice cracked. Come on, man. You're making this sound worse than it is. Everyone has something. I clicked the Bluetooth speaker on. A soft chirp, then silence. I want to be precise, I said. This is a 3-minute clip from a phone call on January 3, 9:17 p.m. I pressed play. His voice filled the room, casual and confident. I've already told the landlord we're moving forward on the office space. I just need your signature to finalize. My father's eyes shifted to Jason. I waited. Then my own voice on the recording. You said you needed the funds to secure the lease. Now you're saying you already signed something? A beat. Then Jason on tape, smaller, well. Not signed. Just gave him a verbal. He knows we're good for it. I stopped the audio. At Thanksgiving, Jason said there were other investors. On this call, he says they're waiting on me before they commit. I hit play again. They're waiting on me to confirm your buy-in first. Once you're in, they're in. I let the words fade. In evidence rooms, silence is a solvent. It strips away excuses. My grandmother spoke first, barely above a whisper. Jason. You said the money was all ready. Promised. He rubbed his temples. Nana, I was moving things along. You have to move fast in business. I turned a page. About the lease. I set down a printed email from Harper and Whitfield Properties, subject line inquiry for Suite 3B. The property manager's reply, no signed agreement is in place. We requested a deposit which was not received. Dated January 2, 10:11 a.m. No lease. No deposit. No contract. Aunt Carla tried to rescue him. Maybe he was optimistic. That's not a crime. I nodded. Optimism isn't the issue. Misrepresentation is. I slid forward the use of funds page that had nestled initial debt consolidation on line 8, masked among marketing and equipment. I'd highlighted it in yellow. He planned to use investor capital to pay pre-existing personal debt without disclosing it to the family. Jason thumped the table. It's still the same pot of money. Who cares which order? Investors care, I said. If you raise capital for business expenses and secretly redirect to personal liabilities, that's fraud. And when you target family under social pressure, it's exploitation. My father finally spoke, voice low. Is there anything you've said that is strictly true, Jason? Jason's eyes flashed. I'm trying to build something. Alex makes 6 figures and hoards it while I lifted a hand. This isn't about my salary. It's about the truth. I turned to the final tab, corroboration, and placed 2 short statements I'd collected, one from his former roommate, unpaid utilities, move-out date with meter readings, and one from a friend he'd pitched, a simple notarized affidavit that he'd lost $2,000 after Jason missed deadlines and stopped responding. I didn't need drama. I needed pattern. I closed the binder with a quiet click. I'm not investing. Beyond that, I won't be participating in any family narratives that frame refusal as selfishness. For transparency, I've also shared the SBDC memo with the family group email. If anyone wants to help Jason, do it with eyes open and paperwork in place, collateral, repayment terms, disclosures. Anything short of that is enabling. For a long minute, no one spoke. The chandelier hummed. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator cycled on. Then my mother folded the SBDC memo and set it down like it had weight. Jason, she said, you put your brother in a corner and lied to all of us. Apologize. He stared at the table, jaw working. I was just trying to apologize, my father said. Not loud, but final. Jason swallowed. I'm sorry, he muttered, eyes still down. I shouldn't have done it like that. I didn't gloat. I didn't look at him. I packed the binder back into the bag, slid the speaker into a side pocket, and stood. I'll send everyone the documents tonight. If you want templates for safe lending, I'll include those too. But I'm done being the villain in a story I didn't write. On my way out, my grandmother caught my sleeve. Her voice shook, but her eyes were clear. Thank you for bringing the truth. I nodded once. Outside, the air had that metallic cold that makes sound travel farther. I could hear a neighbor's wind chimes half a block away. For the first time since Thanksgiving, my shoulders dropped. The weight I'd been carrying wasn't just financial. It was narrative. And I'd finally set it down where it belonged. The fallout didn't hit all at once, it spread like cracks in glass. When I walked back into my parents' house a week later, the mood was different. No one mentioned Jason's venture. No one teased me about my salary. Instead, they spoke in lowered voices, careful, like they were circling around a wound. The first crack showed at Sunday dinner. Aunt Carla, who had been Jason's loudest cheerleader, kept her eyes fixed on her plate. Halfway through the meal, she finally muttered, Alex, I owe you an apology. I pushed you when I shouldn't have. I nodded once, not to rub it in, just to acknowledge it. My grandmother was less subtle. Jason lied, she said flatly, cutting her turkey. You didn't. Her words carried the kind of finality only age and authority can deliver. Even Matt, my cousin who'd accused me of being selfish, avoided me for days before sending a text, didn't realize he was in that deep. Sorry, man. One by one, the voices that had cornered me at Thanksgiving shifted. Their tone wasn't pity. It was shame, for backing the wrong side, for letting Jason's performance override common sense. Jason, meanwhile, was unraveling. He stopped showing up to family dinners. When he did, he arrived late, sat silent, and left early. The swagger that had filled the dining room on Thanksgiving was gone, replaced by the twitchy silence of someone who knew his credibility had evaporated. Word spread beyond the family, too. My uncle mentioned that Jason had approached him privately for a small loan. When he declined, Jason tried another cousin. Both told him no, citing my binder without naming it directly. His reputation wasn't just bruised, it was radioactive. And the irony was brutal. Jason had tried to use me as leverage to look successful in front of the family. Instead, exposing him had reversed the narrative. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who dealt in facts instead of fantasies. He was the liar, the schemer, the desperate one. The same table where I had once sat cornered in silence was now the place where his silence condemned him. And though I never said a word to twist the knife, I knew he could feel it every time someone looked at him differently, every time a conversation went quiet when he walked in. That was the reversal. Not yelling. Not revenge speeches. Just the slow, suffocating awareness that he'd destroyed his own credibility, and there was no buying it back. For a while, the silence held. No more late-night texts. No more forwarded spreadsheets. January thickened into February, and the snow along my block in Denver turned from white to the kind of gray that looks like it remembers every tire that touched it. I went back to my routines, up at 6:20, coffee at 6:30, inbox triage by 7:15, site walkthroughs twice a week. Normal felt like a luxury I'd earned. Then the first true consequence arrived, not for me, but for Jason. He called on a Thursday afternoon, unknown number, blocked caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and deflated. Landlord wants proof of funds or the inquiry is dead. They said you sent them an email. I hadn't. The property manager had simply closed the file after our earlier exchange. Jason was discovering that when you burn credibility, doors stop pretending to be open. A week later, my mother forwarded an email chain. Jason had applied to a local microloan program and listed family backing as a collateral narrative. The program did its due diligence and asked for written confirmation from me. I replied with a single sentence, I am not an investor and have not authorized my name to be used in any application. The program thanked me and closed the file. No drama. Just policy. The real reckoning came in March, when a cousin mentioned, carefully, that Jason was looking for a short-term bridge from anyone who'd listen. He'd try a soft pitch at birthdays, after church, at barbecues. Each time, he met the same quiet wall. My binder had never left my apartment, but its contents had migrated into the family's collective memory, the memo, the taped call, the highlighted line item for initial debt consolidation. People remembered the details. Details are hard to argue with. Still, there was the matter of what comes next. Revenge, if you can call it that, isn't finished when the room goes silent. It's finished when the story is corrected, written down, and closed. So I did one more thing. I met Jason for coffee, neutral ground, a corner table at 9:05 a.m. on a Tuesday, where the barista's Sharpie bled through the Jason scrawl on a cardboard sleeve. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired in the eyes. He opened with what he thought I wanted to hear. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. About the pressure. I messed up. I nodded. You did. He bristled, expecting the usual family script, the soft landing, the promise that we were good. Instead, I slid a one-page document across the table. Title, Mutual Boundaries and Disclosure. Simple terms, nothing punitive. 1. He would not use my name or salary in pitches, applications, or conversations without my written consent. 2. Any financial request to me must include a full written plan, signed disclosures of personal liabilities, and collateral terms, no exceptions, no verbal deals. 3. He would send an email to the family acknowledging his misrepresentations and withdrawing his fundraising efforts until he had cleared his personal debts. He skimmed it, jaw tightening at point 3. This is harsh. It's clarity, I said. And it's how you rebuild trust. You can ignore it, and we both go our separate ways. Or you can sign it and start the long, boring work of fixing your mess. He stared at the page a long time, then signed. I watched him write the date, 03/12, crooked loop on the 2, and tuck the paper into a plastic sleeve. Chain of custody matters even in families, you track what you want to keep. The email went out that evening at 7:41 p.m. Subject line, regarding my business plans. 3 paragraphs, drafted with my edits but in his voice, admitting the enthusiasm had become misrepresentation, acknowledging undisclosed debts, and asking that no one lend him money until he provided full documentation. People replied with cautious kindness. No dog piles. No speeches. Just relief that the performance was over. In the months that followed, small repairs showed up like green shoots after a burn. Jason sold the last of his gaming consoles and paid down one delinquent account. He started a part-time job at a fabrication shop, steady hours, actual pay stubs. When he tried to bring up a new idea to me in June, I tapped the plastic sleeve in my backpack. He exhaled, then dropped it. Boundaries worked not because they punished, but because they left no room for fantasy. As for me, I didn't celebrate. I updated my password manager, turned on app-specific alerts for credit pulls, and set a calendar reminder to request my credit reports every 4 months. Precaution isn't paranoia, it's maintenance. I took my grandmother to lunch and let her talk about the old country and the years when people shared because there wasn't enough to go around. I told her I understood. I do. I never sent the binder to anyone outside the family. I never posted a word online. The point had never been to ruin him, it was to stop him from dragging the rest of us into his ruin. On the first cool night of September, I walked past my parents' house and saw through the window the outline of that oak table, the chandelier humming a thin electrical note. For a second, I could smell sage and yams and feel the hot pulse of a dozen eyes on me. Then the memory faded. The table was just a table again. I stood on the sidewalk, hands in my pockets, and thought about the line between generosity and enabling, between loyalty and leverage. It's a thin line if you let someone draw it for you. It's a clean border when you draw it yourself. I turned away, the evening air clean in my chest, and left the house behind like a page I'd finally finished writing. The porch light clicked on, and somewhere a wind chime moved, one clear note hanging in the dark. I kept walking. Final line, the night was quiet enough to hear my own boundaries hold.